Welcome, this is Bill Donahue. Apologize for coughing into the mic. I didn't realize my mic was on. So it's like playing the intro music and coughing, not worried about hitting the cough button because I didn't realize the mic was on. But I'm here. So Bill Donahue, Discerning Truth. Broadcast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, noon Pacific time. For those of you that usually listen on Rumble, hopefully you make it to another platform. I should have known Rumble was going to be a problem when I put it up yesterday. It kept changing the time I was supposed to stream at and making it 11 minutes earlier than what the time I picked. That was my first hint there was going to be an issue. So, but even in my OBS, Foxhole's showing trouble, but I can see Foxhole streaming. So, we'll get going with that stuff. So on Monday, we're in the book of Matthew, and on Monday I did the first 12 verses of chapter 2 in Matthew. And it deals with the birth of Jesus, the appearance of the wise men, that kind of stuff. And then, but I didn't have enough time to complete chapter 2 in one study, so we're gonna take the flight to Egypt and other parts of chapter 2 today. We'll start at verse 13. But before I get into that, I do have a little bit of personal business to take care of. And it's a happy anniversary to this lady. What an amazing person. I can't believe she stuck with me. We've been together 50 years, 48 years married and 50 years together. Talk about tricking a woman. I don't know how she ever put up with me. She deserves a medal, but that's my beautiful wife. So with that, I'm going to get on with the study. And like I said, we are in Matthew chapter 2. And let's see where I can start here. Let's try this slide. Verses 13 to 15. Hang on. Okay. Now when they had departed, these are the wise men or magi. When they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise and take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night, and they departed to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophets, Out of Egypt I will call my son. Now, Matthew clearly claims in multiple verses that Jesus was born while Herod the Great was still alive. Herod the Great's death is usually placed in 4 BC because of an eclipse mentioned by the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. Now, this is what Josephus actually wrote. And that very night, there was an eclipse of the moon. And this is in the Antiquity of the Jews, Book 17, Chapter 6, Section 4. And based on that record about the death of Herod, they went back and looked for lunar eclipses that would have been visible from Jerusalem and that time. And they came up with an eclipse in March 13th, 4 BC. Now, these are Julian dates, okay? These are not Gregorian calendar dates, but just Julian calendar dates. But they're only going to be off a few days to the Gregorian calendar. So that places, according to historians, the death of Herod at 4 BC. So they have to have Jesus born before that. And as you're going to see, when the Magi had seen the star possibly up to 2 years earlier, based on Herod's decision to kill every child under 2 years old, a lot of scholars try to place the birth of Jesus in 5 to 6 BC. Okay? So that's what that's based on. Okay? Now, Josephus provides 2 reign lengths for Herod. 37 years from when Herod was declared king by the Romans, which is typically dated at 40 BC because they date his death and then you count backwards, and 34 years from when he captured Jerusalem, which is typically dated 37 BC. Well, how are you king of Jerusalem before it's captured, right? And so what you end up having, because Josephus is not using these BC, AC, AD dates. He's using other things. And these are historians inserting those dates. Okay? Now, 40 BC is to 4 BC is 36 years inclusive. But if you include one of the years, you can make it be 37. 37 to 4 BC is only 33 years. But again, including, you can make it a 34-year reign. Right? This method of counting, when partial years is included, is supported by historical practice. And M.O. Schurer's book, A History of the Jewish People in the Time of Jesus Christ, goes into this in detail, that they did count that way. But a broader historical context, including Roman consular years, and interaction with Augustus, supports this 4 BC date. So it's not just the eclipse, but a lot of these dates. I'm telling you, dating stuff in antiquities is as much an art as it is a science. It's not as exact as people want you to make it believe. And these dates all sound solid until you realize that Josephus didn't write down 40 BC or 30 BC or 4 BC. To date these things, historians are often moving dates like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, and they move them around until they try to find a fit. Okay? Now, if they have something they think they can anchor to, like an eclipse, then they move the puzzle pieces to the eclipse. The problem is there's another lunar eclipse that was January 10th, 1 BC. Well, suddenly, if you move the death of Herod into 1 BC, then Jesus could be born in 2 or 3 BC, right? So that moves a big movement in the dates, okay? And Jesus being born in 4 to 6 BC and his family fleeing to Egypt has difficulty aligning with other factors in the Bible, okay? And I'm going to show you why. And this is why there gets to be controversy. And when you read books, and they'll give you exact dates for the birth of Jesus and exact dates for his death, and tell you that this is a exact day fulfillment from the edict to rebuild the temple in Nehemiah to Jesus made his triumphal entry of all these sets of dates. These people are playing fast and loose with the truth. We just don't know as much as we want to. Okay? Now, if you read history books, they're going to say things such as Tiberius, the second Roman emperor, seems to have ruled from 14 AD to 37 AD. These dates are established through detailed accounts in Roman historians like Tacitus and Suetonius, as well as coins and inscriptions dated to his reigns. None of these have dates on them. Not Tacitus, not Suetonius, not the coins. Don't have dates. It's not like when you pull a coin out of your pocket today and it tells you the date it's minted. That's not the case. Okay? But they believe his rule started on August 19th, 14 AD, and the Senate confirmation happened on September 18th, 14 AD, and this reign of his until his rule of his death on March 16th, 37 AD. Now, Tacitus's dates have a lot more corroboration than some of the other dates we've been dealing with so far. Okay? But understand here, all these dates here, Tacitus at 14 AD, Suetonius at September 18th, 14 AD, and that, March 16th, 37 AD, and all of that stuff. None of these writers use those dates. They're using Roman consular years and other ways to date him, and historians are converting it to AD and BC for us. Okay? Or now they use BCE and CE, right? Here's the problem. And like I said, they didn't use that system, right? The consulship of Sextus Pontius and Sextus Apollonius to start they're using that to get the start of the Tiberius's reigns. And that all seems to align with 14 AD. So we have a better fix on 14 AD for Tiberius starting than we do on the death of Herod. There's a lot more things pointing there, but it is far from exact, right? But if you accept those dates from historians and you go, okay, I'm going to agree that Tiberius started reigning here, and what Tacitus says about he started his reign on September 18th, 14 A.D. Then the 15th year of Tiberius started on September 19th, 14 A.D. and went to September 17th, 15 A.D. Right? Well, that's wrong. That's the wrong date. That I got the ADs are wrong. I typed this wrong. 15 from 14 is 28 AD to 29 AD. Wow, that's a serious typo, Bill. I'll fix that on the PDF. Okay. So people connect Luke 3 that mentions the 15th year of Tiberius with Luke 3:23, which speaks of John the Baptist starting his ministry when he was about 30 years old. We know Jesus is about 6 months younger than John the Baptist. So if John the Baptist started when he's about 30 years old, let's assume when he turned 30, and he had to start his ministry somewhere between September 29th, 29 AD, and September 20, and 430 AD, right? When he dies. You get that? That doesn't give you a lot of time. 17. Come on, Bill. I'm trying to fix this on my notes so I don't forget. Okay? That means John had to be born. If that's true, John had to be born in the spring of 2 BC. Jesus being born 6 months later put Jesus in the autumn of 2 BC, probably September or October. Very likely September, but some of the Jewish holiday dates end up in early October. But I would say September is in 2 BC is the most likely date. But I'm doing the same thing historians are. I'm moving dates around to see what fits. This is not dogmatically, thus saith the word of the Lord, Jesus was born in September 2 BC. It's just not that solid. Okay? And these dates don't match with traditional dates for Herod's death, which is 4 BC. But if you move the eclipse to January 10th, 1 BC, and say that's the eclipse that Josephus is talking about, and the family of Jesus departing to Egypt into late 2 BC after Jesus is born, right? If he's born in September, a little later in 2 BC, he leaves for Egypt. Then, and Herod dies shortly after January 10th on 1 BC. Then they're in Egypt for a fairly short period of time, right? But this doesn't align with the previous speculation that we had seen about the constellation, that the alignment of the constellation that we saw out of Revelation that provides allegedly provides a birth date of Jesus in 911 3 BC. We're off by a year. Something's not. If the constellation theory is correct, these dates are not aligning, and this is why you have trouble dating Jesus in his birth, and when you have similar problems with his death. You have scholars all over the board with 30 AD being the most prominent, and then 33 AD being the second most prominent date. Those are 3 years apart. There are other people that pick 31 and 32, but 30 AD is most scholars, you're going to see them landing on there. Well, if Jesus doesn't go into his ministry until 29 or early 30 AD and he's dead in 30 AD, that's a problem, right? He could go in 29 AD if John 6:4 is not accurate and the ministry of Jesus is only 70 weeks long and not 3.5 years long. If John 6:4 is wrong, you can fit the ministry of Jesus into about a 1 year period if that's correct, he could go into ministry in 29 AD and be dead in 30 AD. But I'm telling you, people that tell you they have exact dates and they have charts and figures and all that stuff either don't know the subject or they're making stuff out of whole cloth. You cannot nail this exact. And I actually spend, I don't know what spec is, I spend a lot of time. I swear to God, people, I do proofread. This drives me crazy. I spend a lot of time on the dating, but the last thing I highlighted in these two verses is Matthew's use of Hosea 11:1. And this is what Hosea actually says. When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The context of the passage is speaking about the Israelites and their exodus from Egypt. You can go read the whole thing. It's about the exodus. But God has Hosea referred to the Israelites as a singular son, giving it a secondary purpose. So what Matthew does is what every other writer in the Bible does after Moses. They will quote, paraphrase, or allude to previous revelation and then bring it forward to make a new theological point. He takes this passage, he takes a piece of this passage that's about the Israelites, apparently, in its basic primary meaning is about the Israelites. And he's going, no, do you see that reference to the son? It says actually a prophecy of the son coming out of Egypt. Now, Jewish critics will tell you that's not a way to interpret the Bible. And if you go to seminary, they're going to teach you that's not the way to interpret the Bible. I'm telling you, that's the way the Bible writers interpreted the Bible. Okay? I got a choice. I can believe my seminary professors about how to interpret Bible. I can believe all the pastors that went to seminary and never questioned this, that you should take it literally and do all that stuff. Or I can follow the pattern used by Jesus and the apostles and every other Bible writer. I'm suggesting to you that you're better off following their pattern and to understand how they use Scripture. And then verse 16 says, then Herod, when he saw that he was tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in that region that were 2 years old or under, according to the time he had ascertained from the wise men. Remember, the wise men told him they had seen the star, his star, about 2 years earlier. Well, we, I think, picture this massive massacre of babies, right? And go, why wouldn't any historian mention it? But in first century AD, Bethlehem in Judea up in Galilee is a small small town, has an estimated population of 300 people. Now, archaeologist William F. Albright it determined that population based. And if we take the suburbs or whatever, the areas around the actual city, right, you're only going to get a couple hundred people more. So using Albright's estimate, the number of male children under 2, according to the time, right, that they're doing, would have been 12 to 14 kids in the city. And even if you go to the outlying area, most estimates place it at about 20 to 30. The highest estimates I've seen put it at 70. Would a historian make note of Herod killing, 20 to 70 Jewish kids? Probably not. I mean, it just doesn't seem that thing. But we think of it as this massive massacre, like he went through and killed thousands of kids. Dozens, a couple dozen. Right? And then the fact that no historian recorded this event is no surprise. The death of 12 to 30 kids, or even 70 Jewish kids, wouldn't have been noteworthy in that time. I mean, even today, we have things that are going on. You look at massacres in countries in Africa that are in the millions and they barely make the news, right? This is not going to be newsworthy for most historians, right? But even if you went with the Egyptian plagues, where the death of the firstborn in all of Egypt would have been massive, the only place that we seem to have historical corroboration for that, it's sparse. The Ipuwer papyrus is from the Middle Kingdom library text, and it contains a description that some people, including myself, interpret as parallel in the biblical plagues, including the widespread death. Doesn't specifically say the firstborn or whatever, but it talks about a widespread death. But it's not widely accepted by Egyptologists of actually being speaking about that. And Egyptologists have disconnected the Bible from the study of Egyptology. And in doing so, they made a big mistake. But I'm just letting you know, even a death toll on that scale is barely recorded in Scripture, in history in any way. And then verses 17 and 18 says, Then was fulfilled what was spoken of by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentations, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be comforted because there are no more. Okay? So Matthew, again, quoting Jeremiah 31:15, but its original context, the passage likely refers to the sorrow and mourning associated with the Babylonian exile, which happened during Jeremiah's time. Remember, I told you when we went through the study that as a percentage of the Jewish population, more of them were killed in the Babylonian conquest than in the Holocaust or at any other time in history. Maybe not more in numbers, okay, because the population was bigger at the Holocaust days than it was at that time. But as a percentage of the population, more were killed. This was a time that left a real scar on the minds of Jews. In the first century, when Matthew is writing, this is not ancient history. This is 500 years ago, right? That this happened. And so what you have him doing is pulling that verse out, which seems to be about that Babylonian conquest, and applying it to the mourning for the death of these firstborn in Bethlehem. And this is why Jewish critics criticize New Testament writers for how they interpret Scripture, Old Testament. This is super common, right? Then verse 19, it says, But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph, saying, Rise and take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's death are dead. And he rose and he took the child and his mother and he went to Israel, the land of Israel. But when he heard Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. And he went and lived in a city called Nazareth, so that when that was spoken of by the prophets might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. Okay, so Herod, after Herod's death, his kids rule at different parts of the kingdom. This Archelaus is taken over in Judea right after he does. But remember, Judea and Galilee are like two different provinces. Think of this like Canadian provinces, right? You know, they're like different provinces in Rome. Okay, under two different rules. They might be populated by Israelites generally, but they're not. And Samaria cuts through them like a belt. Okay? But this is talking about. So in Judges 13:5-7, you find the Nazirite vow. It has nothing to do with being born in Nazareth. Right? But this is what people think Matthew is alluding to about not cutting your hair like Samson and stuff, this Nazarite vow. And Matthew is connecting that vow to Jesus living in Nazareth because they come from the same root word. So either Matthew's alluding to some text that we know that is lost, right? Or he's doing some creative interpretation of Scripture when he connects the city of Nazareth to being a Nazarene. And some scholars reject this as being an allusion to the Nazarite vow, but if they do, they're hard-pressed to find a passage that it looks like. But what you have is both Nazareth and Nazarene come from the Hebrew word netzer, which means branch. And branch comes from Isaiah 11:1. Now this is making more sense. Is Matthew making a connection not to the Nazarite vow so much, but to the branch in Isaiah 11:1? And I think that shows how he's doing this, and it makes more sense than the Nazarite vow. But you also have the problem that there's a suggestion that people come from Nazareth are lowlifes, because you have this comment in John 1:46 about, can anything good come out of Nazareth, right? It means people in the first century didn't have a high opinion of people from Nazareth. So that's even better explaining that why the Messiah. The Messiah was born in a lowly thing, put in a manger, that he didn't come as a king. He didn't do that. He fled to Egypt for his life. He comes back and he lives in a city where people don't think much of the people in that city. This is all a consistent theme. But what I'm trying to focus on for you here is that the way the biblical writers interpreted the Old Testament is not the way that you or I or anybody else you know probably has been taught to interpret the Old Testament. In fact, if they took a class in biblical hermeneutics at a Bible college, every biblical writer that I'm aware of would fail that class, because they don't follow the rules that we are taught. And that's what I'm trying to show you. And if they don't, maybe you and I shouldn't, right? That maybe you and I ought to read the Bible the way it's written, instead of the way our fundamentalist kind of mindset says we need to read it. Okay? So today's going to be shorter than normal, and because I didn't have that much, it didn't break exactly in half, the chapter. But I want to do put on a song, read the chat. I'll come back and talk to you, and then I'm gonna preface what's coming Friday. Okay.
worship you alone. You will come to take me home.
You are all I ever need. Jesus, you have set me free. I will worship you alone. You will come to take me home. You are all I ever
You are all I
need.
need.
Jesus, you have set
You
me
set me free.
I will worship you
I will
alone.
worship you.
You will come to take me home.
I've fallen on my knees. I will bless the Lord. Do, 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 do. Oh, oh, oh.
Okay, we're back. We're back. So, thank you. Um, I like every version of Knees that Michael did, but that one, that I like that upbeat one every once in a while. So, you'll hear me play that often. I just didn't see any questions about today's lesson. It doesn't seem that thing, but I'm really sorry about the difficulty. I am seeing comments that not only did Rumble not load, but DLive is buffering. Great. That's why, you need to have multiple locations where you can find me. Because if you go to one and it's not working, you just click over to a different account, right? I think this makes, yeah. So I'm gonna deal with that right now. Okay, I am Donahue Papa on most accounts because when I went on the internet, my son set up most of my accounts, and so he made me Donahue Papa. And then I messed up that account on Pilled, and when Method helped me fix it, it became Bill Donahue. And I would have doxed myself, but he definitely did. I was never tried to hide my identity, but I just went by that. And then when I had the Discerning Truth, I couldn't get any of the names I asked for, and then they picked Discerning Truth 534. You still, if you want to find me on YouTube, have to type in the whole thing, and sometimes then I only come up as like your fifth choice, so it's kind of crazy. And so I broadcast Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Monday and Wednesday, I typically do a book of the Bible. We'll be in Matthew until we finish. And then on Friday, what do you call it? I'm going to do a thing on all the, it's just kind of an overview of the false teachers and teaching that I'm seeing online. False prophets, false teachers, false teaching, and examples of what's going on. I'm just getting inundated with this stuff. And when I woke up this morning, I got an email message about a sign. We used to live in Southern California and off the 15 freeway down outside of Temecula. And I got a message that there's a billboard up off the 15 freeway in Lake Elsinore, bold letters declaring Jesus is not God. And it's from a what appears to be a small Unitarian group. They won't put their names on their website or identify themselves. That's usually a red flag for anybody. And a lot of times little groups would have money appear bigger than they are. There was a streamer, Arnold Murray, used to teach the what do you call it, serpent seed doctrine and British Israelism, all kinds of other nonsense. And if you look up Arnold Murray's actual church, it's not that big, but he has a huge presence online. I mean, he bought all kinds of TV time, and you would think he had a 10,000 seat church, and he's a little small church in the thing. He's passed on, and now I think it's his son preaching the same nonsense. But that happens. So this WLC.org, these people, and that caught my eye. I said, WLC, that's William Lane Craig. No, it's worldslastchance.org. And they put up the sign, and they try to make themselves bigger than they are. But when somebody won't tell you who they are and be honest, straight up about them, it always raises red flags for me, right? And then on Tuesdays, I'm on with Neo. I always love my conversations with Neo. It's just a blast. And often we'll go down rabbit trails and not on the subject we started on, but I like that method of studying the Bible. Now, I broadcast, all my times are Pacific time, noon Pacific time, even though I'm in Hawaii. Neo still uses Central Time from Chicago, even though she's in Mountain Time now, but she broadcasts at 10:30ish, okay? Sometimes 10:15, but certainly by 10:30 she's on in the Central Time zone. And that's always fun. You can catch me there. If you have a question, or you're watching a replay, or you're like on Rumble where I'm going to have to upload a copy today, and you get your question after I'm off the air, just email me, Bill at Discerning Truth, plural, Bill at discerningtruths.com. And then I will correct things like that serious date error in my slides. I will correct that and upload a PDF of the corrected slides on Discerning Truth groups in Telegram. You can get it. I haven't written much on Substack lately, but it's out there. If you're interested in the musings of a twisted mind, I write on Substack also. I started on Cloud Hub. I love Cloud Hub, but the people that took over after Jeff Brain and to me have run it into the ground in their last upgrade. They just wiped out my account, so it left me with 2 followers and all my content gone. I just switched them off. So I'm really concentrated on Rumble and YouTube for replays. And then, there's always a benefit of Foxhole, but the replays on Foxhole I can't quantify and identify like this. Rumble has channels underneath your main account, like Donahue Papa's the main account. And then I have a channel called New Testament Books, a channel called Start Here, Matthew being New Testament books. On YouTube, they offer you the ability to organize in playlists. So I found playlists long before I found channels, and I create every book that I do its own playlist. Like Matthew will have its own playlist rather than be grouped with all the other New Testament books. But they both have a Start Here. If you're new, Start Here is where you want to go. And I do that, and then I always promote my good friend Michael Beatty in California. I got to go back and listen to a stream this morning. I missed it, and so after I'm off the air, I'll go back. And Michael will be on this in about 16 minutes praying for the nation. So on Wednesdays, he prays for the nation. But the rest of the week, Sunday to Friday, he takes Saturday off, if you can call it taking off. He's usually writing memes and writing songs and stuff. But he doesn't stream on Saturday. But Monday to Friday, he's been in Acts right now. And on Sunday, his wife Linda joins him, and they're in Psalms. And Michael and I had always promised to do another Prophet Club, and we just have never been able to get together. In fact, I asked Michael if he could join me Friday when I'm going to go through this stuff, and he's not available. But he streams at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. So if you see me in Michael's chat, just know Bill can't sleep because that's 2:30 my time, and they're not there. So, yeah, Mystery 20, my wife sometimes watches my streams. She's heard all the stuff you're hearing. There's just kind of a, whatever thing. And then, and Mr. Snarf, Matthew 1 and 2 made you be more pro-life, especially with Rachel reference, Jacob's wife. Yeah, it's, God has control of this. I mean, I've loved all my children. I can't imagine killing one intentionally. And I feel for people who are ever deceived into doing that or put in a place where they felt like they needed to do that. Or the rare occasions where pregnancies come from things like rape or whatever. I feel for people that did that. But because children have been a blessing in my life. And the bigger blessing than that are the grandchildren. But it's 1A. But you just that's my life. I have my own sins, my own faults. I'm not going to judge somebody else for how they sinned. We all come to God with our own failings. But yeah, I cannot imagine killing a child. It's beyond my comprehension that people defend this so strongly. But Friday's going to be a little longer than normal. Sometimes I go over on Friday, and it definitely, I'm gonna bring the heat, because I've really had it to hear with the amount of false teachers. And what prompted this was, I got up last Sunday and I was reading on Substack, and I have people I follow, and I don't agree with all the people I follow, but I do agree with a lot of them. And I finished their articles, and I moved over, and they have a tab that says following, and they have a tab that says Christianity, and I went on a Christianity thing, and I was through 50 articles before I found one that actually taught Christian doctrine. Every amount of heresy that you can imagine was being presented as Christianity. I was blown away. And I get messages all the time about what a great Christian platform Substack is. Yeah. Either we stop being able to recognize what Christianity is, or we have zero discernment as a church. And I think there's zero discernment going on. And that's kind of what prompted it. And if I wasn't sure I was going to do it Friday, the billboard in Southern California kind of drove a stake in it and just said, yeah, this has to be taught. This has to be taught now. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. Give you guys a chance to take a little break before Michael comes on in a few minutes. He's over on Rumble. Hopefully his channel works, not today. He's also got a big following on X. I rarely get comments on X. Michael often has comments over there, but his Rumble chat bounces. So with that, I'm going to get out for today. God willing, I'll be back Monday, and I'm going to go spend some time with my wife. Thanks.